Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. Hi, and welcome back to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, and today I'm joined by Dr. Doni Wilson. So Dr. Doni is a naturopathic doctor, professional midwife, clinical nutritionist, best-selling author of Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health, and an internationally renowned speaker and thought leader in women's health. For over 25 years, she has been on the cutting edge of healthcare, helping women to transform their health naturally. Dr. Doni's HPV protocol has helped over 10,000 women to clear high-risk HPV to negative and prevent HPV-related cancer. A true advocate for women's health, she is dedicated to empowering others to take control of their healing, drawing awareness to the profound impact of stress and trauma on the body. You can find her blog, podcast, How Humans Heal, and transformational programs at drdoni.com. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. Dr. Doni, welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. It's so good to be here with you.
I was just saying to you before I hit record that I had the pleasure of preceptoring with you and learning from you in person live and actually seeing you work with women through HPV diagnoses and cervical dysplasia. So the honor is all mine to have you here today. And I was sharing that it was such a special It was really just important to me, I think, in my journey as a clinician to actually see women heal and to learn that from you so that I had the confidence moving forward with women. So thank you for that education and again for being here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad that you had the chance to come into my clinic and to see these transformations happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And see what it was like to run a practice too. You've been such a mentor and motivation for me, inspiration for me. Yeah. So I would love if you would kind of just start at a little bit of the basics. So if we have a listener who maybe has recently been diagnosed with HPV or has previously been diagnosed with HPV, what is something that you wish she would know right off the bat about what is HPV and what are we going to do about it? And then we're going to get all in depth as we go.
Well, one thing is for women to know that it's quite common that 80% of us will be exposed to and potentially test positive to high-risk HPV by age 50. Because a lot of times when you first get that diagnosis, you feel like you're all alone and you're the only one in the world, and you feel like, who am I going to talk to and why is this happening to me? And so a lot of times women feel really hard on themselves when they get that test result that says positive HPV.
Yeah.
And then beyond the feeling hard on yourself, it becomes afraid because the standard medical approach doesn't offer anything for helping you to clear the virus. And so I want women to know that it is possible to clear HPV to negative and keep it negative, even though that's not commonly talked about, and even the doctor's office is probably not talking about it.
Right. And they're probably told in the beginning to potentially even watch and wait and not really told that there's so much they could be proactive about.
Exactly.
So exactly how common, I know you said a number, but in your practice, is this something that you're seeing all the time? I know that you've focused your practice on this. So how much are you talking about HPV every day?
Well, yes, now in my practice, I talk about it every day. And I help women around the world. So, like,
Amazing.
I might be talking to a woman in Spain or Dubai or Australia, Canada, as well as in the United States, and women of all different ages, from women in their 20s to women in their 70s, and all in between, women who've been dealing with HPV sometimes for 15 or 20 years or 30 years of their life. It's really sometimes so heartbreaking to hear what women are going through related to this diagnosis, that they're because they've been in the wait and see for so long. They've been, okay, just come back in 6 months or a year. Okay, now we need to do a colposcopy. Okay, now we need to wait another 6 months to a year, see if it gets worse. If it gets worse, then maybe we need to do a procedure, or they start talking about needing to do a surgery or a hysterectomy. And it is, and this just gets drug out sometimes over decades without women ever hearing that they could do something
Something
proactive
about it.
about it.
Yeah, and then they're just living in that fear-based existence around their health and not feeling
Mhm.
empowered to do anything.
And this wasn't originally something that you're asking me, how much of this is part of my practice now. In the past, it was, well, see, when I graduated from Bastyr University, I graduated, as women's health focus and midwifery. So I had already been trained in how to help women with HPV and dysplasia and escharotic treatments. And so it was already part of my practice. And I was, from that time, being referred patients specifically for HPV and dysplasia and escharotics from the moment I started practicing. And yet
Okay.
I didn't really talk about it. I wasn't doing videos. I don't even think we did videos back then. That was back in the year 2000, 2001. And I wasn't even writing blogs about it. I was because I didn't realize that it was something that I could help that many women with yet. But I
Yeah.
did have a lot of women still coming into my practice. They were being referred, and little by little, along the way, it was like, wow, this is like the thing that I'm helping women with that isn't being talked about. In fact, it was my patients would say to me, Dr. Donnie, I wish you could tell other women this was possible.
Yeah.
And because they felt once they experienced seeing their cervix heal and the HPV go to negative, they would just be begging me, please tell other women. And so that's
Yeah.
what really helped me to see, oh my gosh, I need to talk about this more. And so I started doing more videos and YouTube and a podcast and so on. And so the more I've been able to talk about it, the more women I've been able to reach. And so now it's more and more part of my practice. And I'm so glad, because there's still a worldwide hundreds of thousands of women are dying of cervical cancer. Sometimes we see these notices, oh, cervical cancer has decreased in certain countries, but some countries it's not decreasing. And there's still a lot of women still being treated for cervical cancer and dying from cervical cancer without ever having known that they could have done something to prevent it.
Right. Yeah, prevention is so key. Before we get into that, I can't help myself but to ask, I've asked pretty much every guest, how did you come to naturopathic medicine and midwifery, and what was your journey leading up to that? Was it a personal health diagnosis? Was it curiosity? Was it just knowing there were other ways to practice medicine? How did you come to be here?
Well, you see, my father was a pharmacist, so I grew up in a pharmacy. He ran a
Oh,
pharmacy throughout my
interesting.
childhood, and he ran a chain of pharmacies, over 1,200 pharmacies. So I was really introduced to health and medicine and pharmaceuticals through my father. And the interesting thing is, as a pharmacist back then, his training was how to help prevent the need for medications. I laugh because now we wouldn't think that of a pharmacist,
Oh,
right? We go to a
no.
pharmacist for medications. But
Yeah.
being his daughter at home, he would talk about, oh, if you eat these foods or if you take these vitamins, you could prevent health issues. You could prevent the need for medications. In fact, we hardly ever took medications in my childhood. I didn't ever take antibiotics through my whole childhood. I
Yeah.
think it even surprised my father that when I went to college, I was studying science and I got really interested in nutrition. I was like, okay, I'm going to get my science degree, but what about nutrition? And so I just started taking nutrition courses on the side. And then it led to a whole second degree in nutrition. And once I completed the science degree and nutrition degree, I had this thought one day. It felt like it came from nowhere. I was like, why isn't there a type of medicine that includes nutrition and food as medicine? How could I? And I said it out loud. And a friend of mine in one of my classes said to me, well, what about naturopathic medicine?
Yeah.
And I didn't know it existed. But
Yep.
I was like, it almost felt like I created it in that moment because it was so clear to me that that's what it should be, you know? It was like, this should exist. And so that's when I was like, wow. And this is before Google, so I couldn't, or Chat GPT for that matter. I had to get in my car and drive to the naturopathic medical school and be like, do you guys really teach
What is this
medicine
medicine?
related to food and nutrition? Is this real? And so, that's what kind of got me then going in that direction. But even before I figured that out, I had been doing internships as part of my pre-med degree. I was doing internships with all different practitioners. And
Mhm.
so I had been interning with orthopedic surgeons and OBGYNs, and I had been observing all kinds of surgeries. And I really, one day I saw a sign for the midwife's office, and I was like, what's a midwife? And right then I knew I want to be one of those. I want to be a midwife because I was already observing what happened in the gynecology office,
Yeah.
also for myself, because at that same time I was diagnosed with HPV in my 20s, and I went through the fear and isolation, and I can't talk to anybody about this. What's going to happen? What are they doing? What, they're giving me no information.
Mhm.
And so I was in that same, in my own physical health, dealing with women's health issues and HPV, and then observing the OBGYN in her practice and realizing there's got to be a better way, right? So I just started putting these pieces together and decided, hey, I'm not going to go into it. I was supposed to go to pharmacy school. I'm like, I'm not going to go
Mm.
to pharmacy school. I want to go, I don't want to be offering medications. I want to be offering, it's not that I'm against medications, but it's like I wanted to be able to help prevent. I wanted to be like, how can we help change diet, use nutrients, herbs? How can we use midwifery to support women in a more holistic way? And so it just all came together, and I was like, I walked into Bastille and they were like, "Oh yeah, we teach food as medicine. That's what we do here." And it was they must have been laughing at me because I was like, "That's real." And they had also a midwifery program at Bastille at that time. So I
Yeah.
was like, "This is perfect. It's all in one." And so that's what led me to, and it took me, I took a year to decide, but every single day of that year, it was just more and more clear. Like,
Mhm.
this is where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing.
I love that you had that inner voice, that inner knowing and guidance.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of the people that I've asked that question have similar stories, and I similarly was kind of working as a medical assistant with a surgeon, and I just kept thinking this can't be the thing that I'm going to do. And I was very interested in psychiatry and mind body medicine then. And I just said to the audiologist, like, I can't go through with medical school. This is the path I chose now. I had been as pre-med, or I was a psychology major, and then I did my pre-med work after that. And I just realized, like, I can't do this. This is not medicine. I want to talk to people. I want to talk about diet. I had already started exploring homeopathy and herbs myself. And same thing, she said, there is a medicine that does that. And I didn't know, because apparently we're all hiding out practicing medicine under a
Exactly.
rock.
Yep.
Which is part of why I'm sure you have your podcast, and now I've started this, is that I also hear that story from women. You need to talk more about this. Why don't women know about this? And
Mhm.
I'm just so glad that women have you as a resource.
Oh,
Um,
thank you. You
can you tell
too.
me? Oh, thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about why some women might clear HPV and some women might not, without, maybe
Mhm.
knowing the knowledge base that you're eventually going to share with them if they become your patient? Are there some predisposing factors that might make it harder for a terrain to clear HPV?
Mm, absolutely. And that's exactly the difference of how I look at this. Is yes, we can use immune stimulating natural substances, right? Like one of the most common things that I think women find out about if they're like, "Oh, I want to take something natural," the most common thing they're going to hear about is AHCC, which is an extract of shiitake mushroom. And shiitake mushroom is beautiful, right? All the mushrooms can support our immune system. And so we can go directly toward supporting the immune system, whether that's with vitamin C or AHCC or both. However, that's not necessarily getting to the underlying causes that we address with naturopathic medicine, right? To be like, okay, yes, we want to support the immune system, but why is this person's immune system not clearing this virus? And that's the key difference in the question we're asking, right? It's most women come in saying, why did I get this virus? Like, what's wrong with me? Or what did I do wrong? Or, like it's more, it's asking that question of why did I get this virus, and what am I going to, now what? And they feel stuck and even paralyzed in fear. And the different question I'm asking is, why hasn't your body cleared it? It's not about because most people think that it's all about exposure to HPV.
Yeah,
Most
and it's
people think,
not.
okay, I'm going to get exposed to this virus and therefore I'm positive and therefore I'm at risk. But that's not the whole equation, right? Because there's millions of people being exposed to this virus. And what research shows is that 90% of people clear HPV within 2 years. So that means the human immune system can clear the virus, completely clear, not just suppressed and not just like a dormancy or something. It's completely gone, 90% of cases. If that's true, the immune system can clear it. Then we have to start saying, well, why is it in the other 10% of people or women, but it also happens for men, why aren't they clearing it? What's going on that their immune system isn't clearing it? And instead of just trying to push the immune system, what if we look for what's underlying that's preventing their immune system from doing what it's really meant to do, which it can do. And so I've identified 8 common, I call them susceptibilities.
Okay.
But it's that same concept of, right, like underlying causes or root causes or, what's in the terrain, the same kind of language. But I tend to think of it as a susceptibility because when we're dealing with a virus and we think about it as what's making me susceptible to the virus, it's a nice word that helps us gently evaluate that for ourselves, because women are already being so hard on themselves about this. I don't want them to be harder on themselves. I want them to be able to say, hey, I want to reconnect with my body, my mind, my emotions, and I want to take care of it better, and I want to understand what it needs. And so I need to do that. I need to understand what's making it susceptible so then I can address those things.
Yeah, and you can also then look at the diagnosis almost as a symptom, right? And the body is communicating to you, hey, I'm going to give you this virus or start replicating here. And if you don't make some changes and address the terrain or these susceptibilities, I could potentially become something else. So I like that. Can you tell us what some of those susceptibilities are?
Definitely. So number 1, to me is stress exposure, which I know you talk about a lot. And I, of course, talk about a lot because to me, that's been one of my main passions and interests over the years. And when I was able to connect the dots, I think it's because I was so interested in how stress affects us as humans that I was able to see that the stress was making women susceptible to HPV. And it could be stress of many different types, right? It could be your current stress, maybe from a job or a relationship or financial stress or graduate student stress or new mom with a newborn stress. And it could also be stress that's been happening over time. I talked to a woman last week who said, I've been under extreme stress for the last 10 years while going through a divorce and all the things that go with that. Or it could be really also trauma that even came from childhood. What the studies show is that women who experienced abuse in childhood, and that's not just sexual abuse, because a lot of people assume, okay, we're talking about HPV, it's sexually transmitted. Maybe that makes sense if they were exposed to sexual abuse. But it's not just sexual abuse. It's emotional, physical, psychological abuse also increase susceptibility to HPV and cervical cancer. and a lot, like a very high increase. And so you could have experienced something in your childhood that's increasing your risk of dealing with HPV and abnormal cells now, but that doesn't mean that you're stuck,
Hmm.
right? We can heal from trauma from back in time. We can heal from stress and trauma in our current day-to-day life. And the more we can help women to understand the impact of stress and trauma and steps they can take to heal, the more we're going to help them fend off HPV.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the things that stand out to me about your work are that you can take, some people might say, oh, stress, right? It's this vague umbrella. Like, we all have stress. I can't avoid stress, Dr. Downey. Like,
Mhm.
that's not going to be doable. But then you've actually articulated through your work of, testing cortisol curves and looking at neurotransmitters and really identifying different stress patterns. You've now been able to communicate, okay, we see this data in labs, we see it in your history and your story and your trauma history, and now we're seeing it play out in your immune system's ability to clear something. And so you're able to connect the dots that take this vague, oh, stress, right? And really make it a concrete, well, this is how it's impacting your body. And then here are steps that we're going to take. And that's why I love your care framework. It's all really helpful to translate to a patient, something that might just sound like, oh, yeah, stress, whatever.
Yeah, because of course, we're going to have stress, and so
Yeah.
we can feel stuck. We can feel like, well, of course, I need to have a job and I have my family and how am I going to, it's not like the goal is not to try to eliminate all the stress and get to zero stress. That's not the goal because that would be more stressful. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So it's about how do we, and that's why I named the book Master Your Stress. How do you, instead of manage your stress or get rid of your stress, it's how do we learn how to live in our lives that are going to have stress? How do we take care of ourselves so that the stress doesn't have such a negative impact on us? And so it's shifting that conversation to say, wait a minute here. If I can understand how stress impacts my body as an individual, I can know what steps to take to protect myself from stress.
Absolutely. That's part of that empowerment, obviously. Because it's one of those diagnoses where women are told, oh, this could become really scary and dangerous. So at some point, if it gets to this level, we're going to cut it out of your body. But
Well, that's more
also, up
stress.
until then, we're not going to do anything.
It's
So-
so stressful, this diagnosis. Women, I think, and the research shows this, that women who are diagnosed with HPV experience a high level of stress, anxiety, and a psychosexual impact because it's so much fear. I mean, you're told you have a virus that could cause cancer and there's nothing you can do about it. Anyone would be in fear, right? We would be like, well, what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to get through the next day? And so it's such a state of fear, and the standard approach perpetuates that fear.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the first things I do is help women to see that there's another option. It's not just there's this virus that can cause cancer and there's nothing you can do about it. It's okay, this is a virus that you were exposed to that your body can protect you from if when your body's in a healthy state. So let's start focusing on what we can do, and all of a sudden, things shift. The fear starts going down. But what I always explain is that literally just the stress of dealing with HPV perpetuates HPV.
Mhm.
We have to change that, Kelly.
Absolutely. There are a lot of times that women come into my office, and whether it's an HPV diagnosis or endometriosis or painful periods, and I am so frustrated and angry when that patient leaves because they have not been given the full picture. They've typically been handed a pill or offered a procedure and really not given more information. So before we go on that rant, is there something that can, so say a woman goes to a conventional OBGYN, is there something that they are doing really well in standard conventional care that is helpful to patients? And then where is that point, or what is that then next step that you just really wish women knew? Okay, I've gotten the diagnosis. Obviously, they can find you, they can find your program, but what's something they could be doing in that office visit that maybe
Mm.
they're doing well, and then something they could do a lot better in that moment for a woman?
Well, I mean, I look at it as thank goodness at least. And then can you imagine that they only figured out it was only in the 1990s, that they really figured out that HPV was causing cervical cancer. This is pretty new when you realize, like,
Mhm.
this is pretty new. This is for how long women were being diagnosed with cervical cancer, and they didn't even know it was HPV, and they weren't even doing pap smears, right? So
Right.
just to think, okay, well, at least we can screen. At least we
Yeah.
can be. And now, actually, the screening is shifting into, you can even do a home test for high risk HPV. And for especially women aged 30 to 65 who've had previously normal pap smears, that's a viable option, is to just say, hey, I've had all normal pap smears, but still you should be screened for HPV on a regular basis, like every 3 to 5 years at that point. You can do a home test for HPV. And if it's negative, you don't really have to go do more investigating. If it's positive, that's when you're going to want to go into a doctor's office to get the additional screening, whether that's a pap smear or a biopsy, which is called a colposcopy. And so we can identify what degree is this virus causing abnormal cells. It's a gradation, right?
Yeah, can
From
you
mild.
explain that a little bit for listeners?
Yes, so it's like, to me, it's valuable information to know, because it's going to change what I recommend. So I actually want to know, is it mild, where the virus is either not causing abnormal cells, or mildly abnormal cells, in which case a procedure is not needed. We can use all oral diet and vaginal herbs and nutrients and probiotics, and we can do a lot of healing when it's at a low grade. So I'd rather catch it at low grade and help you heal from there, so that it never has the opportunity to go to high grade. But that's the reason to go into the doctor's office, right? And you and I can offer those services if we were to. I no longer offer that in my office, because I know that's something that women can get in a lot of different clinics and under insurance. So you might as well go get that information, and
Yeah.
then, and if you get a biopsy and it turns out that it's high grade, like say it's
So
CIN2.
step one would be knowing and maybe having that explained to you more. Sometimes patients haven't
Yes,
even had that explained. I had a patient
exactly.
yesterday who said, I got this information back after my pap smear. No one explained it to me. They told
They
me it's
don't.
fine. It's nothing.
They don't. They say, oh, just come back in a year. But so I always recommend that women ask for a copy of your results.
Yeah.
When you go in for a pap smear, you go in for an HPV test, or if you go in for a biopsy, ask them for your report, because then you have it for your records, and then you can ask me and Dr. Callie, what does it mean? And help you understand what the results mean, so that you're not just in this, I don't know what it is, I'm missing to go back in a year. It's so much
Right.
better to say, hey, let me start taking action now, when it is low grade and before it becomes high grade. Now, if you're already to high grade, if you already got the CIN2-3, then know that there is still an alternative option to a LEEP procedure called escharotic treatments, which is a traditional treatment on the cervix using natural substances like bromelain and herbs and zinc. And it's a specific sequence, either done by a practitioner or taught to you to do at home by a practitioner. But this is a way to safely remove the CIN2-3 without causing scar tissue or the other potential side effects of having a LEEP procedure. And so I want women to know, hey, if the doctor said you need a LEEP, it's worth getting another opinion from someone who offers escharotic treatments, to say, hey, is escharotic treatments an option for you?
Yeah, women don't even know that's an option, and that's why
Yeah.
I said to you before we started recording, I'm so grateful to have witnessed you walking women through that, teaching women, teaching their partners. It was really impactful to me as a young practitioner to see in action and see these women healing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
teaching
The
is so
cervix can
key.
heal. The cervix
Mhm.
can heal. That's what women are not taught, that the cervix can heal. The cervix can, just like we grow new cells on our skin
Right.
every day, the cervix can grow new cells. So we can slough off the abnormal cells, and then the body can grow new healthy cells. But we want to change the environment in your body so that your body can grow new healthy cells, that the virus is not taken over yet. And And even if you do a procedure, even if you decide to have a LEEP, or you need to have a conization or what surgery, or whatever you end up doing for your treatment with a gynecology office, they don't treat the virus.
Right.
So they
That's
send
such a
you
key point. That's such a key
yeah, they
point.
send you out. Women say to me they sent her away with her thinking, "Oh, I dealt with it. I'm
Yeah.
done." And lo and behold, a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, it's back again
Yeah.
because they never helped you to clear the virus to prevent it from recurring.
Yeah. And that's again very much aligned with the thinking about working with the terrain. Like I had a patient a couple weeks ago who similarly was told, "Oh, you don't need to worry about this, just watch and wait." And I said, "Well, in context of your Epstein-Barr virus that we've talked about, in context of these other things that we've been working on in your health and your gut health, there's actually a reason why this is expressing itself right now, and there's a lot that we can do about it so that the next time you go, it's not there." So,
Exactly. It's so important. And that's a huge missing piece. It's such a gap. And it breaks my heart again because I see women who, even after a hysterectomy, the virus can cause abnormal cells vaginally. And so then it just continues this nightmare. And to see women recently, a woman I worked with who literally had a her doctor had scheduled a hysterectomy, and she her boyfriend found me, and she canceled that hysterectomy and worked with me through my protocol, including escharotic treatments. And just in the past couple weeks, we got her negative results. She was able to completely avoid a hysterectomy and heal her cervix and clear the virus after dealing with it for over 15 years.
yeah.
And that's life changing. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it used to be thought, oh, we don't need our uterus, just have a hysterectomy and take it out. It's not going to impact anything, but it does have an impact. And this is
Absolutely.
another big piece of information that needs to be shared more for women is like, okay, if absolutely is necessary to have a hysterectomy, okay. And for those of you who've had to have a hysterectomy, we can help you with that situation. However, what if we could help prevent the need for a major surgery like that?
Yeah. And so for obviously listeners who have been listening along know that I have, a framework that I work through, and we work on the gut brain axis, and then we move on to the HPA axis, and we work on hormones and neurotransmitters. So walk me through a little bit of the framework where maybe you're working on the gut or
Yeah.
nutrition or hormones or sleep. Walk me through some of those things that you might introduce to a woman to do this healing process.
All of that, because those are the other underlying susceptibilities. It goes right to the gut health. And of course, stress disrupts our digestion. And people don't often think of this connection between the vagina and the cervix and the gut, right? We hear about the
Mhm.
gut brain axis, but we don't hear so much about the gut vagina axis. But
Yeah.
there is such a thing as the gut
Yeah.
vagina axis. And to me, the main place we hear about it is in terms of the microbiome, which is definitely important. The gut microbiome influences the vaginal microbiome. And when the vaginal microbiome is disrupted, it allows the HPV to hang out
Mhm.
and stay too long and cause trouble. So if we know the HPV is present vaginally, right away we need to be thinking, hey, what's happening in her gut?
Mhm.
Is there a dysbiosis, an imbalance in the gut bacteria that may be predisposing her to HPV? We got to go back to the gut. And I find actually also a connection between leaky gut and HPV, that a very high percentage of women who are testing positive for HPV have leaky gut because I'm testing them.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if there's certain bacterial overgrowths that you see most commonly, but leaky gut similarly, I would think is a very common pattern in your population of patient.
Very
Yeah,
common. I and gluten sensitivity.
yeah,
I can't say that 100% of people have gluten sensitivity, but it's a very high percentage of women who test positive for HPV have a gluten sensitivity. And so yes, a person could decide, okay, I'm just going to start avoiding gluten and start avoiding dairy and other highly inflammatory food. I prefer to test, so I recommend test for these food sensitivities,
mhm,
IgG food sensitivities, for example, so we can see the delayed reactivity and we can confirm, is your immune system trying to protect you from gluten or any other food that you're eating all the time, which is a way to then avoid the inflammatory food, which allows then your immune system to focus on the virus instead of protecting you from your food. And it also tells us about the leaky gut, right? If we're reacting to the foods we eat often, that's the definition of leaky gut.
yeah.
And so that's how I identify leaky gut, is by doing food sensitivity panels. And I see, oh my gosh, and women will be like, oh my gosh, I'm reacting to the foods I eat every day. Okay, that's leaky gut.
Right.
We gotta start healing the leaky gut. And as women heal leaky gut, they have a way greater likelihood of HPV clearing and staying gone.
Even from that one foundational step, which is so
Just healing
amazing.
leaky gut.
Right.
Just healing leaky gut, let alone, yes, sometimes there's some severe gut dysbiosis, not always, but in certain cases, then we'll do stool testing to look for gut dysbiosis or gut inflammation. And certainly, if she has a history of vaginal yeast and BV, research shows increased risk of HPV when you have a history of yeast and BV vaginally. And we know that if you have yeast and BV vaginally, highly likely to have gut dysbiosis. And so the more we can help women heal their gut and heal the vagina together, now it makes it a lot harder for HPV to hang around.
I usually frame it that, so before you were talking about how you might cut something out, but it's not necessarily addressing the virus. And similarly, if you're not working on the terrain, you're not working on the immune system or the body that's going to clear the virus. So a lot of times it is understanding, okay, if we work on the immune system and the immune system via the gut first, a lot of times that's going to be what we need to do to clear things. And we don't even necessarily need to be taking antivirals, quote unquote. Of course, there's a time and a place, but yeah.
And I guide women to check their cortisol levels, as you've mentioned, which is one of our main stress hormones. But we also measure neurotransmitters. I love looking because
I was wondering what your testing looks like nowadays with patients, and it sounds like it is similar to what I learned from you, and that makes sense. That's similar to how I practice as well. The data is also really good motivation, because what we're asking patients to do is often make a lot of changes and transform, and sometimes we need data to do that.
Yeah, it really helps clarify, because when women see, and plus the treatment's different, right?
Correct.
If we can't just assume. A lot of women assume they have high cortisol, and there is a high percentage of women who are dealing with HPV who have high cortisol, but not everyone. And so when we test, right, if we have high cortisol, we're going to use herbs and nutrients to help bring it back to optimal, bring it down. If they have low cortisol, which I also see in at least 40% of cases, then we're going to use different herbs and nutrients to bring it up.
And especially if they've had chronic stress or a lot of traumatic stress, you're going to tend to see that cortisol can become depleted, or then those other pregnenolone and DHEA, and you can look at their stress reserves that way. And it really just opens up the conversation again around, there's nothing wrong with your body, but these are the things that your body has to work with, and these are the things that we might need to support more given your history.
And so that's why in the process, not only do they clear HPV, but they feel better, right? Of course, then their hair, first thing I usually hear is, my hair is growing. My hair's not falling out. My skin looks better. The bloating is gone. My energy's better. I'm sleeping better, right? And if I start hearing that, I'm like, okay, that HPV is like got its days limited now, because her body is starting to work again and the systems are starting to work. But of course, we know, like serotonin and GABA, our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. So it's like we heal the gut. Now the neurotransmitters start being produced. The nervous system starts calming. When she's been in a state of fight or flight because of this diagnosis, finally her nervous system's calming. And it's only when we can get out of that state of fight or flight that our body can heal. Right? If we're still stuck we're depleted in our calming neurotransmitters, and maybe the cortisol and adrenaline are too high or too low, how's the body going to heal in that state?
Yeah, I talk about that a lot, that the body heals. Yes, the body heals. We say it all the time, but the body also needs to be in a healing state to heal. So providing that healing state and that safety to the body is so much of what we do. So if someone feels like they're doing kind of everything right, but they're still stuck in survival mode, what are some tips that you've learned through all of the women that you've helped through this process?
Oh, I love this question. And it brings me to something that I've realized along the way of helping women with this, thousands of women over 26 years now. What I found is that it wasn't just healing on a physical level. It was, they needed help to heal emotionally and spiritually as well. And And that's, I think, where, like, if a woman is still kind of stuck in, like, that fear wants to keep kicking in, I mean, certainly we'll address the neurotransmitters, like, we'll get some magnesium to process the adrenaline and maybe some GABA as a buffer to the stress. But it also says to me that I'm going to be checking in with her emotionally. What are these emotions behind? And there's often the shame, the guilt, the
Mhm.
embarrassment, the fear, so we need to be helping her to process emotionally and even spiritually and reconnecting with herself. And so subsequently, with the work I do one-on-one and in group programs, is I build that in. We don't just work on a physical level. We work on a emotional and spiritual level to help women really heal and shift those trauma patterns, because really the HPV is causing a trauma.
Yeah, I love that. And when you were talking before about hair loss, I was kind of giggling because the fourth pillar in what I call the vital spirit method is hair, skin, nails, and spirit. And my thinking was that I was trying to, lay out a roadmap for patients to experience and know where they're going and kind of know what the steps were. And I was saying to myself, well, once their hair is looking better and their skin and their nails, we're probably having more conversations around mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And we've already done the gut brain axis work. And so it's very similar in that these will all be woven in because we're one organism and we have a mind, we have a body, we have a spirit. And when our body's reflecting something like HPV, there's often things going on other layers and levels of
Well, and especially
existence.
because
So,
we're mostly talking about the pelvic area.
yeah. So tell me more about that as a pattern.
Well, it's interesting, right? It's this pelvic area of the body, the root chakra, and this is an area for women to feel empowered, but it can also be when women have felt powerless that things get depleted, right? And so looking at what has been her experience, including in relationships. And I very often find that women have a history of what I call toxic relationships of some form. And it may be in romantic relationships, but it may also be in a work environment or family of origin type patterns, what might be referred to as narcissistic relationships or narcissistic abuse. And I think those toxic relationships end up greatly affecting women in the pelvic area, and they feel disempowered. They feel made small. They've not been heard or listened to. They feel isolated, right? These are these patterns of
Mm,
HPV that match up energetically. And so the more that we can help women to feel heard and seen, we put light in the darkness and help them feel empowered about their ability to heal and to reconnect with their own body. It completely shifts the energy in the pelvic area, and allowing them to embrace their femininity and themselves. It's so healing, and that doesn't happen in the standard medical approach. Women are more afraid of their pelvic area instead of
yeah.
less.
Yeah, absolutely. And you probably find that just by naming that for a patient, or now that you have helped 10,000 women heal through this process, you've seen the patterns, you know them so well, and you can probably articulate to a patient something that they're just like, how do you know that? How did you even ask me that question? And
Mhm.
it's making connections for them, much more quickly. Not that there's anything wrong with therapy work, but you might be in therapy for many, many years and not be necessarily connecting your pelvic health or your cervical dysplasia to a pattern that maybe you've named for them. So I love that you're offering that information.
Mhm. Mhm,
Yeah.
definitely, and it's also quite a common thing to be diagnosed with HPV during perimenopause and menopause, and that's an interesting thing too, because it's often a time in women's life where their roles and their
Yeah.
in their life are shifting. It sometimes is this midlife opportunity to reconnect with themselves and taking care of themselves, and also that's when estrogen starts changing. So
Hmm.
that's another key susceptibility with in terms of hormones, is when estrogen starts dropping and estrogen drops vaginally, it affects the vaginal microbiome and makes women more susceptible to HPV. So it's like this, it becomes this perfect storm, right? It's like the pile up of stress to that point in their life, as well as any gut health issues, and then additionally that the estrogen is dropping and then the HPV shows up. Because so women will say to me, why now? Like I've been in this same relationship maybe for 20 years and why now did HPV show up positive? Part of that is because maybe in the past the doctor wasn't even testing for it. Now it is being tested for. But I think it's because it's the accumulation of factors. So it's not usually just one susceptibility, it's usually multiple susceptibilities that are interrelated that add up to, okay, now this HPV can actually, what the studies show, HPV evades our immune system. If it can grab a hold, so to speak, it goes into the DNA of a human cell and it starts hiding the cell from our immune system. It isolates the cells and takes over and hijacks our cells literally and starts making them into HPV abnormal cells. And so we want to be able to, we have to understand this virus to outsmart it, is what I say. And the more you can understand, like, wow, that virus is pretty sneaky. We need to really do the opposite. We need to be, instead of going into hiding and isolation, we need to bring the light and say, okay, this is not going to happen anymore. We're going to change the environment and change her relationship to the environment so that no longer can that HPV be so sneaky, hiding in her cells.
Yeah. And I often find I obviously work a lot with women through perimenopause and menopause, and there's some reason that brings them into the office, right? And I'm not excited that a woman has a diagnosis, but I am excited when it's been that motivation to, all right, let's get really clear on what my body's telling me. Let's look at what I need, and let's recognize that through this phase of life, it is an initiation. It is a transformation process. And I do find that a reason to kind of start looking at our body and our health that way can be really key at that phase of life. I actually listened to your most recent podcast episode on menopause. And if anyone is listening interested in that, I highly recommend it, where you were breaking down a lot of the questions that you get about menopause hormone replacement therapy or menopausal hormone therapy. And you were giving the analogy of the bread and the sandwich and like everything in between. And it was a wonderful episode. So I highly recommend listeners go check that out. But I was just so excited that you are obviously practicing in a similar way, where this can be such a wonderful phase of a woman's life. And especially if she's been hiding out or maybe not, taking her power back in other aspects of life, or not caring for herself and not focusing on herself, that this can be the time where the body says, no, you got to do it. And there's such positive repercussions that come as a result, where it is life altering in a good way. And more women need to know that. They don't know that when they first come in the office. And so I loved that episode and hearing you talk about it in that way as well.
I'm so glad. Thank you for your feedback, Dr.
Yeah,
Kelly.
you're
That means a
welcome.
lot. It's so confusing. And it's, now, thank goodness, more and more women are hearing about estrogen, and that things have changed, that another fear that was planted on was, oh, this fear estrogen causes cancer. But it was the researchers now have come out and said that they were wrong. And it isn't actually the estrogen that was causing the cancer. It was the synthetic progestin.
Yeah.
So let's just not use synthetic progestins, and then women can actually get the benefit. And so it's another example of where fear and misinformation is preventing women from getting help with their health. And that's what really gets me to get up every day and come talk about it. Like, that's just not okay. Women deserve to have information and be able to make decisions for themselves about what with information, right? Have information to decide what do you want to do for yourself, not just deal with a lack of information. We're too used to that.
Yeah. And with that topic, with many women's health topics, cutting something out instead of understanding it, with replacing something without looking at the train. I've said this to other colleagues. I'm so grateful to have practiced in Connecticut for the last 13 years. Because in the beginning, when I graduated, I thought I would practice more integrative, in the sense that IV therapy sounded cool to me. And I thought maybe I would prescribe if I practice in a state where I'd prescribe. And being here in Connecticut where we don't have prescriptive authority, I truly feel like I've gotten so good at nature cure and terrain medicine and time and place, sure, for those things, but I don't need them most of the time,
Exactly.
and so I think that HPV is just one of those topics where you've designed an entire program. You spent over 25 years helping women to do this naturally and to help their bodies heal. And that really just needs to be spread far and wide and shared. And those patients who said that to you are right. Like more women need to know that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me here so that, listeners will know, hey, if you get a diagnosis, you can come to us. There's so much we can do and guide you. And it's individualized too. Yes, there's specific nutrient protocols we can follow and specific vaginal suppository protocol that I've developed and can offer. And I want women to know that, because otherwise you might be searching online and being like, oh, I'm just going to take HCC, or I'm just going to
Right.
take a little bit of, there's some supplements out there. It's just that what I find is that too often women will come to me when they've tried on their own for a while. They're like, I've heard about this or heard about this, and I'm taking a little bit of green tea or I'm taking a little bit of HCC, and yet the virus is not going away. So if that's you, if you're like, I've been
Yeah.
trying, but it's not going away, please don't give up. It's
Yeah.
likely that you don't have clinically effective doses because
Also very true, right? It's not
right.
just about getting rid of, but it's also you have to use a therapeutic dose and in the right order. There's an order of operations and yeah.
And those doses are not available over the counter most times. So
Mhm.
so you might hear about some things online and marketing, but that if it didn't come from a practitioner who's developed a comprehensive protocol and giving you clinically effective doses, it may or may not work. It's probably not going to hurt. But if you've been already trying that for 6 months or a year and it's not working, then I would say, like, the difference is when you work with a practitioner who can say, because every single woman who comes to me, I look at what she's already taking, and there's
Mm,
always changes I'm making. It's always where I can say, okay, we might keep that probiotic you're taking, and women's probiotic can be a helpful thing, but it's probably not going to be enough. We need to, like, really upgrade and make it comprehensive. And we need to look at your blood work too, because
mhm.
we need to individualize it. Do you
Yeah.
have low iron? Do you have high homocysteine? Do you have low vitamin D? Like, we need to look and see what's going on in your body, not just a one size fits all, but is your blood sugar high? Is your,
Yeah.
what's, those are things we can actually get from standard blood work, but the
Mhm.
doctor's office isn't telling you. And I can't, isn't that amazing how many women I found had, let's say, low iron and high homocysteine, and the doctor's office wasn't
Yeah.
identifying it or doing anything about it.
I just did a whole episode on ferritin because I'm just getting honestly angry. Just like women, we need to know these numbers about ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they're just not
And
run.
and and it doesn't have to be all the way, although I certainly see when someone has diabetes, their increased risk of HPV, but even if your blood sugar levels are a little bit high, hemoglobin A1C above 5.5,
Mhm.
I start seeing, okay, we need to address this because that's also making you susceptible. And so we look at all these different factors, your blood work, your cortisol levels, your gut, leaky gut and food sensitivities, and then we can have not only the clinically effective doses, but based on your case. And
Yeah.
then we can also use vaginal suppositories. Why wouldn't we want to use vitamin A, which has been shown, vitamin A topically on the cervix can heal the cervix from
Mhm.
HPV? Why wouldn't we want to do that?
Yeah,
There's no downside to that.
right.
And yet you're not going to hear that from the doctor's office, and they're not available over the counter. You're going to need to work with a practitioner who can guide you, but then we can get you access to vitamin A in vaginal suppositories and teach you how to use them, and other herbs too. Green tea has been shown,
Mhm.
oral green tea and vaginal green tea. So why not use that to help your body clear the virus and meanwhile heal your terrain? So then now, even if you're re-exposed, because this is a common question, what if I'm re-exposed?
Mhm.
From the same partner or a different partner? If I'm re-exposed, is it going to just come back again? Are we going to pass it back and forth to each other? And what I find, again, seeing thousands of cases is no, if your body is able to protect you from HPV, it's not going to matter if you're re-exposed, because soon as that HPV shows up, it's showing up in a body that is prepared to defend itself.
Hmm.
And that virus is not going to be able to survive. It's going to get kicked right out. So it's not just, again, it's not just about being exposed or re-exposed. It's how do we heal your body? And once you heal your body, once you heal your gut and heal your adrenals and your nervous system, you're not going to want to go back to the feeling awful, right?
Right.
You're going to be like, I want to keep going this way.
Exactly. And even the example you were giving about the blood work and the blood sugar, I look at it also just through the lens of getting the body into that healing state. And blood sugar dysregulation or a dysregulated cortisol curve, then dysregulating our nervous system throughout the day. So we're not getting into the healing state. So again, it's providing those foundational cues of safety to the body through physiology. And a lot of that data comes from doing that thorough initial blood workup to say, why were you susceptible? So I wanted to ask you what gives you, and all of the women that you've worked with, because we talked about this too before we recorded, that it's a lot of work, the work that we do with patients. And there's some discouraging days, or we're kind of sometimes fighting an uphill battle where we're not the conventional standard, right? We're functioning a lot a bit differently. So what gives you the most hope right now at this point in your career, as far as it could be specific to HPV or perimenopause and menopause, or just our profession in general, but where are you getting hope from looking toward the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. I mean, certainly I get every day that I talk to a woman who has cleared HPV, they inspire me a lot, because it's those women who then say to me, okay, this is possible. And I can keep on sharing this message, because if it wasn't working, I wouldn't be talking about it,
Right.
like, so they really inspire me. These women who, just yesterday I talked to a woman who, when she reached out, she was devastated, and she was like, "Well, how could this be that I'm testing?" And a lot of women are wanting to have a pregnancy, right? She was ready to get married, ready to have a
Hmm.
pregnancy. And here comes this HPV. And you're just like, is this virus going to ruin my life and my future? And now 6 months later, she got her negative result, negative HPV, negative abnormal cells, just got married. Now she can actually start thinking about pregnancy and not worrying about this. And part of her case, by the way, is that I identified mold toxicity. She was
Oh.
living in a house that was filled with mold and didn't know. And of
Hmm.
course, the mold toxins were suppressing her immune system in addition to everything else. And so to see cases like that every day, it really just keeps me doing what I'm doing. And so I'm grateful for the women who trusted me, trusted my protocol, and gone through this process with me, because it's a, I teach them and they inspire me to keep going.
Yeah. And then that has a ripple effect on the family that she creates,
Yeah.
because she's going to be a healthier version of herself and more resilient. She's going to understand how to care for her body and her terrain. And as you said, I'm sure there's a lot of mindset work in there, and emotional regulation work, and stress reduction. And so now she's going to go into motherhood a very different mama. So that's
Absolutely. It is.
amazing.
I call it a heroine's transformation.
Yeah.
Women become their own hero.
Yep. We
And
talk
they
about depth
transform.
psychology here a lot too. So I've used like alchemical language and some, yeah, but
Yes. It
totally.
is. It's a really, because at first you might be like, I don't know what that means, transformation. It sounds like,
Yeah.
I don't know, too good to be true or something. But it actually happens. The women actually experience this transformation. And so it's sometimes that itself could be motivating, where women realize I need a transformation, but more often they're motivated by this negative
Right.
result, to
Yeah.
say, I can't live with the fear of HPV anymore. So that's going to push me to make changes. But
Yeah.
that pushes them into the changes, but then it's the transformation that keeps them going.
Yeah. It's more of a becoming than a decline. Yeah. I love that. So before we wrap up, I want to be respectful of your time. Can you tell listeners where they can find you? I know I mentioned before drdoni.com, and just a little bit more about what you have to offer listeners, because it's a whole lot of good stuff. So
Oh, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Yeah, drdoni.com. Doni is Doni.
Yep.
And I run a workshop. I run a live online workshop on a regular basis. So if women really want to learn more how to understand your test results and what are your options and what are some starting steps to clear HPV, I welcome you to come. It's a
Awesome.
free online workshop that's open to the public. And so we can put a link down below to that in case anyone's
Yep.
like, okay, you want to come listen to me for 5 nights or 5 days and learn more. And my goal for anyone who attends that workshop is to walk away with a plan, right? Like instead of a wait and see and do nothing, I want you to have a real plan of action. And so that you're between now and your next PAP and HPV test, you know you've implemented some things that can at least prevent it from getting worse.
Awesome.
And then I also run a group online program for women around the world called Say Goodbye to HPV, and a community of women. So we have a whole online community of women who are working on clearing HPV or who have already cleared HPV, and it's a beautiful community where we are
Yeah.
together twice a month to ask questions, for me to teach them, and to have this continued.
And they can hear other people's stories of success.
Yes,
That's so important.
yeah.
Just believing that it's possible is often the missing piece in a healing process.
And to see other women going through the same thing, it's beautiful to see them supporting each other, encouraging each other, congratulating each other. It's that's the only way we're gonna break the isolation and the shame of HPV, is to say, hey, it's not
Yeah.
just you. You're not alone. There's this whole community of women who are looking at this in a different way and helping each other.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling too embarrassed to talk about it. So that, and then I also do still offer one-on-one care virtually. So anyone who's in need of or wanting more support, especially if you have a more high grade form or feel like you want to do escharotic treatments, that's something we offer as well through my office. So, and
Awesome.
yeah,
I often give your name and resources to patients, especially at the beginning of their journey, for that reason, because just seeing that there is hope and that they can heal is so important. So thank you for all of that.
thank you. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. So thank you again. And I look forward to interviewing you on how humans heal.
I would
And
love that.
thank you for sharing this information with your audience.
You're welcome. One of the things I appreciated most about today's conversation is that it reminds us there's often more to the story than a diagnosis. Whether we're talking about HPV or so many other health concerns, the question isn't just, how do we treat this? It's also, why has this body become more susceptible? When we begin supporting the terrain, our nervous system, our immune system, our gut health, our hormones, and our overall resilience, we create the conditions for healing. If today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to check out Dr. Doni's work. We'll link her website and HPV recovery guide in the show notes. And if you know someone who is recently diagnosed with HPV and feeling scared or alone, please share this episode with her. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, remember, the body heals when given the right conditions. Have a great day.